Okay, so when we're having difficulty with a student in class, we first, and this comes up in our SRBI process all the time, especially for behavior stat, is we have to identify the problem. I don't want you to diagnose the student, so I don't even want you to say they have executive functioning issues. They may be disorganized, right? I don't need to say they have ADHD because they're not paying attention. I just want you to identify what is the actual behavior or task, or what is the barrier? What aren't they able to do? And again, I don't need to decide is that a choice right now, or don't they have the skills? Okay, I just wanted to identify what it is. So um, we don't want to get stuck on diagnosis. We want to get stuck on we want to focus on what's our concern. Um, no matter what the student's age is, the first suggestion I give teachers all the time before they bring a student up was, have you talked to the student? Have you shared your concerns? Have you said, when you're in class, here's what I'm seeing. When you come in the classroom, I see you don't have your pencil. How can I help you? How can we make this work? How can we partner, right? I can talk to the students, see if they have any suggestions. Sometimes as adults, we make things a bigger issue than they need to be. Sometimes the kids have a very simple answer, right? And they may say, I just don't want to. Okay, that's information for you then, right? Versus, I don't know how, I can't, I always forget, whatever it may be. So talk to the student. That's your number one action step after you identify the barrier. And I like to use language that is, I could imagine it's frustrating when I see you do this, I feel like you might be frustrated or upset or this is difficult, right? So don't say, you're not bringing your pencil to class. What are we going to do about it, right? Tone, body language, it's everything. Because we want to assume the best, right? This may be a behavioral choice, right? And that's usually where we go really quickly. It may be a behavioral choice, but we want to assume the best. If we assume the best, most likely we'll have an outcome that is positive. If we've already decided this kid's a jerk and he just doesn't want to do anything, you have a preconceived notion and you are not looking to solve the problem. You want the student to solve the problem and you just want them to be successful in your class and do nothing about it. You don't want to change your behavior. It's their problem, right? Nope, because it becomes your problem very, very quickly. So, we're not going to diagnose, and we're not going to decide if it's a choice or if it's a lack of skill yet. We don't even need to know that. I also would caution you, and this happens when I talk with folks in SRBI frequently, especially a behavioral stat process, is all of the things that I just said, right? I'm assuming that they can't do it, or I'm assuming the frequency, right? I'm going to use this because it's just very basic. Frank forgets his pencil every single day. Well, is it every day? Or it feels like every day because it's really frustrating to you because you have to give him a pencil, right? So do you actually know it's every day, or it feels like every day? So I always go back to, we're not discussing the problem until you bring some baseline data. Our BCBA in district really gets all over this because a lot of times when she starts to take data, it's not really a problem. It's the teacher's feeling it's a problem. So it's very important to look at frequency data before. This can be very, very simple. Small little chart, a sticky note that you have. I've even had teachers, suggestion I made to teachers is, so if a student's calling out in class, right, it's very disruptive, put some paper clips in your pocket, your right pocket. Every time the student shouts out, put it in your left pocket. Quick data collection, how many paper clips are in my left pocket? So again, because a student disrupted you twice in class, it may feel like 15 times, but it was not. So we want to make sure we separate data versus what's our feeling. And another thing I want to caution you, I don't need you to write every single scripted sentence or script every single behavior the whole entire class. You're picking one thing and you're literally doing tally marks. Okay, that's the level of data collection I'm talking about here. I'm not looking for you to do a full assessment on this student. Okay, so we want to make sure that we are looking to solve the problem, right? Not to necessarily first and foremost stop the behavior. We want to make sure we're solving the problem. The problem may be building skills. So for example, we'll go back to our pencil example. Sam isn't bringing her pencil. She doesn't bring it any time during the week. She brings it 0 times. Every day, give her the pencil. Let's assume that data is correct. Okay, so I talked to Sam. Sam, why don't you have your pencil out? What I'm noticing, it's really hard for you to start class and you don't have your pencil. How can I help you with that? Because I want you to be able to start class with your peers, right? So I'm problem solving. She says, I don't know, I just always forget it. Okay, so a solution may be get a pencil cup that has Sam's name on it, talk with her, pick a place in the class that she wants to have her pencil cup in case she doesn't bring her pencil. I don't need you to supply the pencil necessarily. You can email the parents, call the parents and say, here's what we're doing. Sam's not prepared for class. Here's our solution. We're going to start to try to fade this out, right? So Sam now has a container of pencils she can get every day when she walks into class. And you can greet her at the door and say, Sam, how are we doing today? If you don't have your pencil, remember, right? Very simple. Keep shaping that behavior. Keep prompting in a positive attitude. Hopefully, Sam will start to remember her pencil. But if not, she may just be really forgetful in her transitions. If she can put her pencil back at the end of the period, that's another thing. So before she leaves class, we can maybe put a reminder on her desk, put pencil back in the pencil cup, and maybe we look at making a goal. There were 10 pencils at the beginning of the week in the pencil cup. We want to look to see if there's 8 by the end of the week, whatever it may be, right? So we're looking at small progress. I shouldn't be expecting Sam to be bringing her pencil 0 out of 5 days, and then all of a sudden, by the end of the week, 5 out of 5 days, right? That behavior is not going to change that quickly. We need to shape and reinforce that behavior. We're going to talk a lot about shaping and reinforcing soon. Many times I see teachers for something like this, you have a lunch tension, you didn't have your materials. Giving lunch tension is not going to make her remember the next time she's struggling or doesn't have the skills, right, to remember her pencil. And I don't need to assess her to know if she has the skills. Right now she's showing me she doesn't have the skills to bring it to class. Whether it's a choice, it doesn't matter. I still want her to be prepared and successful for class so she can participate. Because if I'm starting class with a problem, I'm never going to have success for the remainder of the class. All right, let's look at another problem that comes up frequently. So initiation, right? So how can we build skills? Because the student not initiating the task because it's a behavior, which we'll talk about later, behaviors, we're still in executive functioning, or let's go assume the best, and that she doesn't have the skills right now. I'm just going to keep using Sam. Sam doesn't have the skills to initiate all the time, right? So I could implement a checklist. I could have a sticky note with me, and every single time that I give the class three directions, I write one direction at a time for Sam, and I give it to her on her desk with this little box that she has to check off, and then she can give it to me if she's done with the task. And then give her another sticky with the next task. When we build some behavior plans for students, we literally have made 10-minute increments. Well, they'll earn points, but also we have to put the task they're required to do every 10 minutes in the box, right? Because we want to make sure the student knows the expectation and understands it. So I may want to make a checklist. If it's a younger kiddo, I may want to make a visual, a first then. I also frequently would want a student to say back to me what they think they need to do, right? Because I may be clear as day, I think. But if that student's processing speed, right, maybe interrupting, understanding, right, or maybe they have some language deficits, I may ask them, okay, so here's your sticky, it says this, what do you think you need to do? Okay, they may say, I don't know. Okay, here, I'm going to give one step further, I'm going to clarify it one step further. I want you to do this, right, and maybe you model. So we may have to keep pulling the expectation back in order to get started. That's a real difficult struggle for us sometimes as educators, right? We want to keep moving forward, and the expectation continues to grow, but we need to look back and say, if I don't pull back, I'm never going to get traction. And that's a huge place that I think we get stuck. So let's go to homework, right? Sam's not doing her homework. So if I can get her to do her homework one night a week, because she's really doing it 0 to 5, I've taken the data. If I can get her to do it one night a week, and I don't even ask her to do it the rest of the week, or it's an option, or whatever I put out there, I can get this week 1 homework done, wonderful. Next week, I'm going to shoot for 2. I'm going to keep building up and build traction. I'm going to pull back my expectation from 10 assignments during the week back down to 1. That might be where I'm at, but if I can gain traction, otherwise, if I just keep giving the lunch tension, not making any progress, nothing's happening. So I have to think about, can I pull back that expectation? Similar to, routines and things aren't being followed, I can give checklists. I can give visuals, first thens. So routines, it's sort of funny to me. I don't have children, but I have dogs. And so when I think about routines, I think about dog training. And I had a BCBA once that I was working with a very, very impaired student. And all I kept saying was, I feel like I'm training my dog. And she's like, because you are. She's like, it's all the same. It's all animal behavior. We are animals, they're animals. It's the same concept. It was really hard for me to swallow, but it's very true. So let's go to a kindergartner, right? Every time Sam, the kindergartner, comes into class, she throws her stuff on the ground. She runs to the kitchen area, play kitchen area, right? Every single time. That's what she does. She just wants to go to the kitchen area. So until we bring back and shape and give structures, she's going to continue to do that because that's the behavior we're reinforcing. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but we'll go back there again. So I may want to think about when Sam comes in, I meet her at the door and I have a visual. First, we, right? Second, we, and then I may also want to guide her with my body, right? And I say, let's go here. If she drops and runs, then we have to go back. Nope, here's your book bag. Remember, first and then, and we have to bring her back. Until we stop that chain of behaviors, we are not going to make any progress. So, for example, with my dog, if I'm telling him to go to his house, which is his crate, right? And he goes and sits in the chair, I'm like, yeah, I guess I'll get him his crate later on. He's learned, great. I don't need to listen. I don't even know what house is, maybe. Must be chair, because you said house, I went to the chair, and you were fine with that, right? So until I then guide my dog back into the house, the crate, and reinforce that, and continue with that same behavioral chain, he's going to continue to go sit in the chair, because I just reinforced, it's fine, I'm going to let it go, right? So we have to think of students in the same manner. We need to shape that behavior and not punish it necessarily. We need to teach it. So I need to teach Sam what the routine is. I need to continue to build the routine. When I look at elementary classrooms, that's why elementary teachers are so much more successful than I feel like middle school teachers a lot. They take weeks and weeks and weeks on routine and structures and expectations, so they're not continuously reminding students. Frequently, I see in middle school, we forget that step because we assume they should just know how to do it, which isn't the case a lot. All right, let's look. Okay, so another executive functioning task that I see students struggle with, and again, call it executive functioning, call it organization, don't call it anything, but it's organization. Kids can't find their papers, right? I can't find my homework, I can't find my notes, the binder's exploding, the book bag is exploding. So some of us might have come from households where our parents were organized, or, we had to clean our room all the time. We were taught how to clean our room. We were taught how to do this. We were taught how to do that. So either some of these students aren't taught the skill, they don't care to implement the skill, or they don't have the skill. It doesn't matter. We still want them to be successful. So when I was teaching a high school math class as a co-teacher, my co-teacher was super organized. Super, super organized. I have dreams of being that organized. But what she did was she knew that, let's call it half to a quarter of her students probably were not going to keep an organized binder, couldn't find anything, and just didn't have those skills. So what she did was she said, okay, it doesn't matter who has the skills and who doesn't have the skills. I'm going to model those skills all the time. It's going to be a classroom expectation. So I'm embedding organization teaching into my daily lessons every single day. So how she did this, she started simply with a binder, right? So all students had to come to class with a binder, and every time she handed a piece of paper out to them, well, before that, students had their binder, she made a table of contents, sort of like blank piece, just blanks where you'd write things in. So a blank table of contents. She also had a identical table of contents on like big Post-it paper on the wall. So every time she handed out a piece of paper, so let's say, I'm going to say it was a fractions worksheet, right? So she handed everyone the fractions worksheet. She said everyone right now needs to put a 1 at the bottom of their fractions worksheet, and they need to circle it in the right-hand corner. Bottom right-hand corner, put a 1, circle it. Then put it in your binder. Flip to the table of contents. Everyone's going to write for the number 1 assignment on your table of or paper on table of contents, fraction worksheet. She would then write it up on the table of contents on the wall. She'd do this for every single piece of paper that should be in that binder. If they were taking notes for the day, she would say, take out a blank piece of paper and write a 2 in the bottom corner. She would put fraction notes on the top. On the sticky, big Post-it sticky note on the wall. Every single day, every single piece of paper. So she would model making sure that their binders were organized and numbered. So she was not wasting her time handing out a million extra pieces of paper because she was ensuring that process was happening. So when she said, I need you to get the fractions worksheet out, remember it's a number 1 on the bottom of your paper. Look for the number 1 in your binder. Okay, homework, paper number 5. It's blah, blah, blah. So that's how she ran her classroom, and it allowed those students who may not be organized like that, be organized. The students who were already organized, it didn't matter. They just played the game because it was simple for them. Because they were organized. That felt great to them. It fit their style because they knew everything worked for them, right? So just because some students may have those skills doesn't mean that we need to exclude them from certain structures in our classroom. And I will note that was a high school math class. So she didn't assume just because these students were in high school they should have all the organizational skills. She's still embedded in her class. She did the same exact structure for her pre-calc class of seniors in high school. No one complained. They all did it. It was wonderful. She gave like 5 points a quarter for a binder check. She also didn't give out extra pieces of paper very often. Very, very rare because the students had them in their binders. So, another thing that I'm going to put in the slides is just some general strategies for executive functioning. So, in our classrooms, I think if we feel good, sometimes we forget what kids need just because we're going about our business. We think we're doing the right thing. No ill intent. It's just how our brains work, and we're not always thinking about how all the other students' brains may work. So, things I think about frequently is our presentation of material. Are there too many words on the paper? Is there not enough white space? Is the font confusing? Could we color code things? Frequently, for example, in math class, I just find if we have less problems on a paper, it's just more visually pleasing and the students more apt to attack the worksheet, right? I've seen projects, not even projects, just assignments from like 8th grade language arts classes. And there are so many words on that paper in like paragraph form. The kids already quit before it's even started, right? We could instead make that into a nice checklist. Very few words, limited directions, right? Lots of spacing and organization, so it's very clean looking. It's not looking like it's like, ooh, words are all in your face. One of your peers in class actually, in her last reflection, talked about this and attached a sample of what she did for her mainstream class. It was exactly that. It's sometimes reorganizing what we're giving students can make it more accessible. Same expectation, just looking different can make a huge difference. Same thing goes with notes, but I find assignments, that's our biggest barrier with kids, is they won't even start because it looks too difficult. So if we make it look more visually pleasing, they're more apt to attack it. Again, whether it's a choice or it's executive functioning, either way, it solves our problem. Let me keep looking at my list. So again, lots of checklists, to-do lists, maybe zones for things in your classroom. I know elementary classrooms do this really well. Things are labeled, there's zones, kids know where to get certain materials. So the cleaner our environment can be, because we have to think of environmental factors as well, the more successful students can be. Pacing and chunking things for students. I know frequently we'd like to give students, here's your assignment, but sometimes literally cutting that piece of paper in 3 pieces can reduce those executive functioning, organization, anxiety, whatever it may be. One thing I find for students who have executive function or organizational type needs that want to be really good students and they're so used to failing or being wrong, they don't write anything down because they just are like, I'm probably gonna have to erase it. What's the point? Is to use sticky notes. So I can give a student sticky notes, and maybe I'm doing a math problem. I keep using math as an example. Maybe I'm doing a math problem. I can put the sticky note underneath the math problem, write my workout, check with the teacher. If I feel good about it and it's right or whatever the situation may be, I can then write it in the paper versus having to continue to erase. So it's just a strategy for students who are anxious about having the wrong answer for a multitude of reasons, whether it's anxiety, whether they're just used to messing up, whether, their organization is really bad. Sticky notes can help that as well. So, right, it's sort of a draft before I have to actually write it down. If it's a student who doesn't want to rewrite things, give them some tape it to the paper, right? It doesn't have to be perfect as long as we're getting the work done. Templates, models. When I talk about templates and models, what I see far too often is teachers giving too many, right? So I can give Sam 3 choices. So for this assignment, here are the 3 that I think will work really well. Tell me which one looks best to you, right? So Sam picks one. Every time now, I'm going to give Sam the same one. I'm not going to keep switching between organizers. I want them to be taught one way of doing something and not have to continuously shift and figure it out, right? So if something works, let's keep going with it. So even though maybe I think each assignment should have a different type of organizer, that might not be in Sam's best interest. So we want to consider those things. Frequently we get stuck on agendas. So students aren't writing their homework down. They're not doing their homework. They're not writing it down. They're not writing in their agenda. So many schools have paper agendas. That fight gets fought far too often. We have to think about what are all the different means or ways a student could record what they need. Can it be digital? Maybe it doesn't have to be in a calendar. Maybe it's just a running checklist, right? So I have sticky notes all over the place with checklists. I don't write things in an agenda because I'm not going to look back and write on one day. Many times my checklist might carry over to the next day. So I'm just going to leave a checklist. It can be a running list. It doesn't really matter. There is this video that's sort of funny on ADHD planners that just talks about not every student functions the same way. Some people want blank paper. Some people want lines. Some people want dates. Some people don't. So I think looking at how that student can best organize themselves may not be the way that I organize myself. So we have to be flexible with that. It may be that they're using technology and they're just taking a picture of their assignment in every classroom, and that's how they organize themselves. And they go home and they do it based on the pictures. I know technology can be a problem, good or bad, but those are all different ways we can think about it. Maybe it's in a Google Doc, maybe it's in a Google Calendar. Whatever that may be, we have to be flexible and not say this is the only way we organize ourselves. For the teacher who did, that I talked about, that did the table of contents, if a student came to her and said, this doesn't make sense to me, she would adjust that. But that was a very clear format that made sense to most students. They didn't have to do much else. So again, I'm going to go back to dog training for one more time because I think it is, again, applicable. So when I, for example, got my puppy, right, I had to teach him everything. I couldn't assume he understood anything. So I had to start from the basics. Even to this day, so this morning we were practicing going from place to house to down to sit to stay, right, with all 2 of my dogs. Yeah, I'm crazy. And so Ollie, right, my husband sometimes has him go on like the hassock and calls it place, but that's not place. Their dog beds are place. So I was telling him to go to place, he goes on the hassock, right? I have to redirect him and guide him to place to make sure he understands what my expectation was, because he was confused because he had different information at one time, right? So I went to give him a treat, right, to reinforce his behavior at one point today, and he got up from his down. No, we're going to go back down. I'm going to communicate and teach you. You get reinforced when you follow the direction. let's go down, and then just show him the down, just to repeat it, right? So those visual cues. I may guide him. I may use my body language, right? So all going back to those basic skills. I can't assume just because he knew it once, right? Or he knew it for 2 years or whatever he knew what my language was, that I may not have to ever reteach that or reshape that or, teach him a different way to do something. So, those are all things we have to consider. I'm going to talk more about behavior later on, but those are just very important things for us to consider with executive functioning skills. Again, I'm using executive functioning. I'm not saying every student has executive functioning needs as a diagnosis, but it's just a word that we throw around, so I'm continuing to use it. Hope that helps.